All right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you for giving us some time of your lunch today. We really appreciate it. So we are the PsychSUSS committee. This is Dominique and Tariq there at the back, and I'm Annabelle. And we have been doing this seminars, as we call it, through the year, but we only have opportunities at raises with the COVID and everything. But now with COVID restrictions being a bit down, we can finally have a venue and do it for a little bit of more people. So that's very nice. And I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions or so, you can ask us afterwards. And just a reminder that we are in our election period now. So if you do want to sign up to be on the PsychSUSS committee, you can go on our Instagram. There's a link, and then you can send all your forms in. Cannot hear you, Tariq. Okay, well, enjoy, Dominique. You
Cool.
can go.
Hey, what's up, guys? Is this working? Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, first of all, you don't really need to take notes. I'd actually prefer if you guys didn't take notes during this. At the end of the seminar, there's going to be a one of those like scannable little QR code things, and then I'll give you a link to like a nice little cheat sheet that basically says everything that I'm going to talk to you guys about with links and videos and papers and all that kind of stuff. So I'd rather that everybody just like gives me full attention, whatever. So I'm also a student. It feels weird being at the front here. It feels kind of cool. I feel powerful. But I'm also a student, and I just want to get a show of hands. Who here are first years? Okay, so basically, okay, that's awesome. Second years? Okay, a good amount of second years. Third years? Okay, they're too good for us now. Also, they're almost done, so this doesn't really matter. So when I was in my first year, I was driven, I worked like a maniac. I didn't take off weekends. I didn't go drinking. I was just hitting the books, grinding. And after my first semester, I felt like I was going to burn out. I felt like I'd never worked so hard. And my marks were like average, right? End of the first year, I think I got an average of like something like 65%. Thanks, thank you. I think I passed math with about 50%, physics 51%, so it wasn't really that great. And then during the space between my first and second year, I did some research on how, because there's been plenty of studying on learning and how people learn and how to study. And then in my second year, with doing less work, I got distinctions in all of my subjects. And it wasn't for working more, it was for changing the way that I was studying. So I'm just going to start by looking at what we've probably maybe been told before about learning. Because I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this model. It's called the VARK model, or the 4 learning styles model. The idea is that everybody's a little bit unique. So some people are reading, writing learners. They learn best by reading and writing. Some people are visual learners, so they learn best by having like diagrams and pictures and stuff. Some people are auditory learners, so they learn better with like podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So I want to see who's been told about this model before. Like who's right? So almost everybody here's been told about this. Well, there's been research on this model to see how effective it is, and it is complete and utter bullshit. It's not true at all. It's complete crap. They've taken people that are reading learners, and they've put them in a class with people who are visual learners, and then they've taught them something new with diagrams and pictures, and then they've tested them, and the visual learners should do better, but they do exactly the same. There's no difference. So, and not only is it false, but the American Psychological Association says that this is not just a myth, but it can also be detrimental to students because they then go down a line of just using one medium to study from. So unfortunately, we do get told some crap, and sometimes we do things that just don't work, and we've probably been doing them for years. So these are some of the things that we do, but we shouldn't do, and everybody here probably does it. I want to direct you guys to... Okay. Is that an oh shit, I do this a lot? Okay, so the second line, reading your material over and over. There's been studies to look at what the most common studying method is for students, and that is number 1 by far. 54% of students say that that is the top method that they use to study. It is also the worst. It feels like studying. I'm reading my material over, but it's what's called a passive learning style. Highlighting, again, it's more active because now you're finding the important points, and then you're highlighting it and coloring it in, and that feels like you're doing something. It feels like you're learning. Rewriting notes, it's better because you're actually using handwriting, and when you handwrite something, it does help it, go in your mind. But you can do it. It takes ages to rewrite your notes. It takes ages to make long, neat summaries of things, and it's not the best. So some of the really, if I can leave you, if you guys can take something away here, the most important principle that I can possibly tell you is the principle of active recall. Active recall is what you're doing when you're in a test. When you're in a test, you don't have your notes, you don't have the answers, you just have a question there. And a question without anything around it. How tall is Mount Everest? And then when you're in the test, you have to dig back into your brain to try and pull up this answer. And this is the best way to learn. It is absolutely the best way to learn. So when I finished my first year, I felt like I was just too dumb to do super well because I'd sacrificed my whole year to do amazing and I just hadn't gotten there. So I thought that I just wasn't smart enough. Or I thought maybe I still hadn't put in enough hours. A lot of us kind of have this mistake of thinking that the best predictor is intelligence, that you're kind of born with, or it is the amount of grinding that you do, the amount of all-nighters that you pull. The best predictor, the number one predictor of exam outcomes for students is the number of past papers that they've done before an exam. That is the number one by far. So active recall is the best way to do things. And so I'll show you a little bit about how to organize your notes around active recall. I'll talk a bit about spaced repetition later. So when you're making notes because look, you have access to things like flashcards, you can find those somewhere, or you can make them yourself. That is a good way to practice active recall. When we're in class, we will take a bunch of notes. Then you can adjust your notes to make them usable as tests later. So this is an example of where I've taken, so generally I'll have a paragraph from my notes, and then afterwards I'll go through them, and then I will add on little questions to all of these little facts, right? Now, the people that are here, some people might be biology students, some of you guys are sociology students, whatever. I particularly advertise this to people who are not in strict mathematics things, because the mathematics is a little bit different style of learning, but with what you guys are concentrated on is facts and concepts, right? So this is from my physiology, which is a very factually based subject. So this won't work as well for something like history or sociology, where the kinds of questions you're being asked in a test are going to ask you to deliver longer form kinds of answers. But you can use a similar kind of principle. If you're in a lecture, you make this long kind of explained thing about a subject in history, the reason that the Roman Empire fell or something like that. Afterwards, you can take that that concept you learned, and you can plop down a kind of question in the margins or something like that to ask you about it later. So once I've added all these questions to my notes, then what I'll do is I'll take away all the answers, and I'll just be left myself with questions. And this is now a test. Now what I basically have is every possible question that they can ask me. And when I go to study, I will just try and answer every single one of these questions. And I won't know half of the answers, right? Because there's two things that happen when you test yourself. The first thing is, if you do know the answer, and you get it correct, and you write it down without any prompts, you won't forget it, man. Like you know that thing, and you know that thing now. If you don't know it, and you're just like, oh, I've got no idea, and you put down an answer, now you're curious, because now you want to know, was I close? Was I correct? Or if I'm wrong, geez, I really want to know the answer. Now it kind of engages you with the work, as opposed to passively just reading through boring notes, and you're not really taking in every kind of fact. So once I've answered all these questions, what I'll do then is I will go and I'll mark my answers. And I will highlight the questions I got wrong. Because now what that means is that on my next study session, I know exactly what to focus on, right? You know what you don't know. We are really bad at just knowing what we don't know. When we're just reading and highlighting, we'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of know that section. You can't really tell. And then you'll be in an exam and you'll have that tip of the tongue kind of thing happen when you're like, oh, I know this thing, but I just can't bring it into my mind. So this helps you to target it. And then the next day, you try those questions, only those questions again, and you'll still get some of them wrong. And then you highlight those. And now, the cool thing is that you know when you're ready for a test or exam. Once there are no highlights to add, you know you are ready. You know that you've got it, and you won't forget it, and you won't have a problem because you've done the test already. Okay, if you handwrite your notes, then this is something called the Cornell method. And this is something that you can use it's very good for kind of concept-based things. Although I tend to type because it's faster than handwriting stuff. So here in that kind of main space on the right, in the top right of the page, that's where you'll have your notes. That's where you'll put stuff in class. On the left margin, that's where later, after the class, you can just throw in questions about that page. At the bottom, you can have a kind of brief summary of everything in that page. So then what you do when you study is you just cover up that right side and you try and answer those questions and you try to scribble the answers to it in like another little notebook. You get the advantage of using handwriting, and then you can mark yourself afterwards. So this is a little paper where it's not actually that important. Carry on. So this is a little, just shows you how effective using active recall and using testing yourself is compared to other study methods. So on the graph here on the left, the larger column are people that use practice tests before their test. The smaller, lighter column is people that just restudied, reread their notes for the same amount of time. And you can see that it's basically twice as effective to use testing yourself in this study. But on the graph on the right shows you the number of people that are using rereading as their #1 study method, right? It's more than half of people, with self-testing being less than 2%. Right? Okay, so now onto actually studying, onto when you're going home and you're sitting down and you're doing it by yourself or with a group, whatever. Just a little question. For the average first-year student, how long do you think the average first year can, when they start studying, sit in front of their notes, start studying, they're killing it, they're just attacking it, they're understanding everything. How long before they go, oh, nothing's kind of going in anymore, I'm just starting to get really tired? And like, how long do you think it is? How long do you think it is? What? An hour, okay. What about you? 30 minutes? All right, anybody else think anything else? 2 minutes. 2 minutes? Maybe some people. Any other answers? Yes, how long? 25 minutes? All right, not a bad guess. It is about 25 minutes. Right, so let's go to my lovely graph. So I added a lot to my PowerPoint, but the one thing I didn't change was this crappy graph that I made. So this graph, the vertical axis is our effectiveness and our efficiency with our studying, and the bottom one is time. So right when you start studying, you're super into it, you're super awake, you're super aware, and things are going in. And then after about 25 minutes, it starts dipping, right? And then you just kind of go into a slog. So the point here is, if you want to do like a 4-hour marathon of studying, effectively you're going to be doing like 2 hours of real studying. So the way you combat this is that you take breaks. Because the cool thing about our brain is that if we study for, say, an hour, having a 10-minute break gets you back to like 90%. Do another hour, 10-minute break, gets you back to like 75%. Right? You won't go back to 100, but you'll be damn a lot better than if you just went straight at it. The other thing about, this is what I do, and this is recommended by a lot of people who are interested in kind of learning and learning efficiently. It's something called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if has anybody heard of the Pomodoro technique? Oh, good. Okay. Does anybody use it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is I use it almost every single time I study, because basically what it is you take an egg timer or the timer on your phone, and you put in like, say you're still not comfortable with studying for long periods, you put in half an hour, right? And you click start, and then you say, for this half an hour, I'm going to study as hard and as quickly, or whatever, it's an assignment, whatever you need to focus on. You're like, I'm going to concentrate only on this thing for 30 minutes. Okay? Hyper focus on it. And then when that timer goes off, you go off, you take like a little break, chill. But you'll see that if you do a hardcore 30 minutes, that can be the equivalent to an hour of kind of, studying, in front of like the TV or on the couch or something like that. Right? So it's really nice, and it gets you kind of into a flow quickly. Right? Also negotiate with yourself. This is sometimes you just don't want to study. Like sometimes you're just like tired as hell, and you've gotten back from school, and you know that you have like an assignment due in like a couple of days, and you really just don't want to look at it. What I do, like I'm in my third year, but I still get this thing where I'm just like, I'm just not going to do it. I know that I'm not going to do it. I just don't want to look at it. I'll put on like a 5-minute timer. I'll be like, am I willing to do 5 minutes of that thing? And I'm like, yeah, I can do 5 minutes. Like, that's cool. And then I'll put on that 5 minutes, and I'll do it for 5 minutes. And then almost every time after the 5 minutes is done, I'm like, oh, I can kind of carry on doing this thing. So it really helps. All right. Okay, so now this is your memory. This is your memory from right when you learn something new and the time that elapses afterwards. So right when you learn something, say you know 100% of it, you very quickly forget it. And within an hour, you've forgotten more than half of it. All right, so we have minds like sieves, all of us. We all are really terrible at remembering things. So the way that what we're doing when we're studying, if we had minds like computers, we just need to go to a lecture and then we could do the test. But we don't. So we're competing, we're fighting against the fact that we are really crap at remembering things. So we need to obviously do multiple sessions of going over the work, right? Now, how far apart should you be going back over the work? Say you have a section that takes you an hour to study, and you have a test coming up. Should you take, and you think to yourself, I need to go over this thing 4 times. So should I use 4 hours in one day to go over this thing 4 times? Or should I use those 4 hours and spread them across 4 days for an hour each? The answer is doing it over 4 days, right? Splitting it up over days. You kind of want to cover one section like once in a day. You can cover a bunch of different sections like once over a day, and then the next day you can go back and go over it again, right? Answer all your test questions one day. The next day you can mark all of it. Or you can mark it that day, and then the next day redo the questions. But you don't want to be going back over it so much in a single period. Because every time you sleep, your brain kind of hits the save button, right? When you sleep, your brain takes that information and it puts it into long-term memory. That's where it does that. So that's very important. So before an exam, 2 weeks before an exam, that's when you want to start your planning and prepping. All right. How much time is it? All right, cool. Okay, writing versus typing. This is not it's not a big thing, but now we're back in class. So now the pace has changed. You know, we can't pause videos anymore. We can't rewind things we didn't hear. So we have to kind of be able to keep up with the lecture and take down as much information as possible, right? So I kind of also want to see how many people here handwrite their notes in class? Whoa, okay, how many people use laptops? Okay, who has a laptop? Does everybody have a laptop? Okay, cool. So the thing with handwriting is that handwriting is good for memory, right? It's if you're wanting to just kind of remember a song, it's better to handwrite the song than to type it out. But in class, taking your notes as class is not about studying, right? Taking your notes in class is not about learning the information then. A lot of it is about taking notes that are usable for later. Ones that you can access, ones that you can get to later that have all the information. And typing, even if you're not that fast at typing now, you can get 3 or 4 times faster at typing than you can at handwriting, right? Undoubtedly. I took time to kind of learn how to touch type so that I can now look at the lecturer and while typing. That's a little bit extra, but it helps a great deal now because I can carry on focusing on the lecture while kind of taking these notes down. And you want to do little bullets. You don't want to take down every word the lecturer says. You want to keep it short, simple, to the point, and then later go back and add little kind of questions and whatever to it. The other thing about when you are taking your notes in class, people are quite afraid of asking questions in lectures, it seems. Because when you're watching a lecture and the lecturer goes over an area that you miss or that you don't really understand, the thing you do is you mark it however you need to. I put 50 red question marks in front of an area that I've missed or didn't really understand. And then you want to get the answer to that area you've missed as soon as possible. So best thing to do is to put up your hand and ask a question, right? And some people just don't want to, or they think that they'll get the answer later. But it's the best thing to do is get it out of the way right then, because also these things come back the next day, and you'll go over a section that you covered the previous day, and you'll kind of be a little bit lost because you didn't get that answer. If you are too kind of anxious to ask the question in the lecture, then go to the lecturer right afterwards and get it sorted out, right? You want to get those red question marks away. Okay, who here keeps a schedule? Maybe let me rephrase. Who here makes a weekly, a week-long schedule? Who here makes a daily schedule for what they're doing? Well, okay, not that many. All right. This is the second most important thing for doing well. The first thing is using good study techniques and actually using them. The second thing is having control over your time and also knowing when you should be working on a certain thing and when you should be working on something else, right? Because there are so many responsibilities that we have when we're here that if you haven't planned yourself out, then you might be reading over your notes, and every 10 minutes be like, wait, should I be doing my assignment? You start your assignment, and then you go, wait, no, maybe this is not the right thing. Maybe I should be doing something else. So I'm just going to tell you guys what I use, right? There's no kind of studies or science behind this kind of thing, but this is what I use, and I've been using it for a couple of years, and it's great because it's not just for university. It helps for life. So who here uses their diary? Who brings their diary to class to use? Okay, not that many. Wait, how do you guys? When the lecturer says, something like, oh, by the way, there's a test next week, or by the way, your assignments actually due soon. What do you use? What do you use? Your phone. Remember. Remember that graph I showed you? Yeah? They say it's on Sunlearn. Okay, and then you'll, at what point do you put it in your like diary that, oh, yeah, in your calendar? Well, and you remember to do that every time when you get home? Okay, that's pretty impressive. Well, some of us don't. And the thing is that there are things besides your classwork that other responsibilities you have. You might have a friend's birthday coming up. You might have some party that's happening on Friday. You might have a sports game you want to go to like the next week. So what I do is I keep like a little notebook with me. I know, it's very cute. You can get it for like $10 at the Nielsen. And it's really killer because what I do is, this is really cool. You guys are going to love this. So on the first page, I make a schedule for my day. Right? I put it hour by hour. I say, 8 to 9, I've got this class. 10 to 11, I've got, this class. Actually, next. Here we go. So on the right side, I've got the little schedule thing, right? That's what I'm doing for the day. Where do I get this stuff from? I open my diary or I look at my calendar and I'll have everything that I'm supposed to do that day in it, right? I'll take all those things and then I'll be like, okay, I've got this class. I've got lunch with my friend. That's going to take an hour, and lunch usually does take an hour. I've got a French essay. I'll spend an hour on that. Fine. I know what I need to do that day. Then on the next page, on another page, I've got things that I need to remember. So and this is like when I'm walking in the shops, I'll be like, oh, it's my mom's birthday, in like 2 days. I need to get a present. And then I can just whip out my pen and just write it down, right? And then multiple times during the day, something will pop into your head. You need to remember, oh, I need to go shopping. Oh, I should get pickles, all this kind of stuff. And then the real part where this kind of comes together is that then at the end of the day, after I've finished everything, or the next morning, I'll go home, I'll open up my diary or get my calendar out, and then I will take all the things I need to remember. I'll then put them down on their respective date. Because, look, at the end of like a long class, everybody's about to leave, and then the lecturer is like, hey, by the way, you guys actually have a quiz, like 2 days. You're not going to go like sit back down, like pull out your diary out your bag, go to the date, and put it in. You pull it out your pocket, you put it in. So I'll put these things into my diary at the appropriate dates when I need to actually do them, and then I will pull that page out, right? Then I'll look at my schedule for the day. All the things I didn't get done, I'll put those in my diary for the next day, and then I'll pull it out. And then right after that, I can plan my day again, because everything that I need to do, absolutely everything, I don't need to think what I need to do. It's already written there in my diary. I don't need to think at all. Okay? It's all there. And that's really helpful, because you can't be thinking about 50 things when you need to focus, right? Having that extra cognitive load, that weighs on you, right? Okay, how much time do we have? Okay, so we still got a good amount of time. Oh, sweet. All right, this kind of last little bit before I get to questions, if anybody will have any questions, I want to talk a little bit more, I don't want to say philosophically, but you all came to university for a reason. Now, I don't know whether you came here because your parents wanted you to come, or just because of that, or if you have a dream to become something one day, you have a dream career that you want to do, or you just became because your friends were coming and you thought that's a cool thing, like, I'm an early adult, that's just what we do. The thing is that if you want to do well, you have to have some reason for being here. You have to get in touch with why you're here. Why are you slogging? Why are you going to class? Why would you be sitting at home for hours when you could be, out doing things that are way more fun? Why are you spending 3 years being a poor student when you could be out making money? And if you don't have the answer to this now, that's okay. But think about it, and write it down. It really, really helps to think, what do I want out of my life? And not just career. What do I want from my family life? What do I want in terms of relationships? What kind of hobbies do I want to have? These are real questions that, now we're at a point where we're out of high school. You can do whatever you want. We're at the place where you're starting to try and turn yourself into the person that you want to be. And it's really important to figure those things out. And if you don't, then you can get caught up. It's very easy to just get caught up in the studying and neglect the fact that you've always wanted to learn the guitar. And then you completely forget about it for 3 years and then go, wow, I've just spent 3 years studying something I don't like, wasting my time. And it's not just a philosophical thing that I'm trying to say, like, to get a point of why you're here, but it's also got to do with actually performing. The way that our brains kind of work motivationally is on something called a neurochemical called dopamine. A lot of people think of dopamine as being the reward chemical. It's not exactly the reward chemical. It's more, dopamine is the thing that gets released when we feel ourselves moving towards the thing that we want, right? And dopamine is what motivates us to do those things. So if you know where you want to go, then every step that you take that brings you a little bit closer to that, your brain is going to shoot out some dopamine, and it's going to go, yeah, man, we're on the right track. We're doing the thing. And that'll give you a kick. That'll give you a kind of reward. That'll be like, this feels good. Because otherwise, and in the same way, know where you don't want to go. So say you're studying, so I'm doing psychology and human life science. I figured out that I wanted to become a psychologist. To become a psychologist, you have to get into honors. In honors, they take 38 people out of over 300 applicants. So that means if you have a room of 100 students, 10 of those students are going to get in. And every single one of those students are trying to get into honors, right? So it's very selective. So having that information, knowing that that's where I want to go, means that I know that I have to kick ass. I need to really, take what I'm doing to a level, that's beyond what I would usually kind of casually do if I'm not having some kind of a future goal. And maybe you're studying something that you don't even want to work in. Maybe you're studying something that you don't actually want to do. And maybe you're just going along with it because it feels like, you don't want to stir the boat. But man, otherwise, if you don't spend time trying to figure it out, then it can come back and bite you. Also, just on a kind of note of how important this is, there's this program called the Future Authoring Program. It's a writing program where they take students and they ask them kinds of little questions, and then the student has to write out a future that they want in like the next 5 years. What do you want in the next 5 years? They write down what they want in terms of their family, their work, all that. They also write down what they don't want. If they gave into all the terrible habits that they have, where that could lead, where they could end up going. And they gave this to all the first years at I think it was an Australian university, and they had a 25% drop in the number of dropouts, right? 25%, that is huge. And in South Africa, I think it's over 50% dropouts in the first year of university students. It is crazy. So that is something that is extremely important to get yourself in touch with the meaning of why you're here. All right? Okay, cool. So that's the end of the presentation. This is the part where I kind of ask questions. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've said, or want clarity on some of the ideas I've put out? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So so he's asking about the learning styles, and he says that he feels like he is in some ways a visual learner because doing something like reading is not as easy, and it's much. He feels that he benefits more from doing things like watching videos where they kind of can explain it in that way. And so the thing with the learning styles is that look, we do have preferences, right? And some things are better learned using visual means. Sometimes a very complicated process can be encapsulated much better in a kind of visual diagram. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that if you take the idea that you will absolutely benefit from just staying in your lane, because there will be some things that cannot be explained visually, or that are better explained using kind of text. There are also things that, like, take something like mathematics. You're not going to learn mathematics best by just reading maths and studying it and memorizing theorems and formulas and stuff like that. The best way to learn math is to do it, right? So that's the kind of kinesthetic thing. So there are places for these things, but it's not cut and dry that if you have a preference, stay with that preference for everything. Right? Is that cool? Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, I mean, like. Dominique. Yeah. Where is it?
You mentioned that past papers is probably one of the best ways to revise.
Yeah.
But for a lot of my modules, at least in the BSc, we don't actually get given past papers.
Yeah.
And most of the time, if you do want them, you have to maybe pay 500 Rand and somebody will give it to you or something like that, which isn't an equal system either.
Yeah.
How would you advise going about things like, well, actually getting hold of past papers and in subjects where it's maybe not offered to you?
That's I'm in BSc, so I've been so frustrated that the university is not willing to put out their past papers because this is the best way that you can learn. I told my dad, who studied engineering here decades ago, that we weren't given past papers, and he was like, "What the hell do you do?" So this is why I spent a great deal of time taking my notes and turning them into papers. And so, unfortunately, 95% of the time I can't get past papers, and so I will have to turn my notes into their own papers and just use that. Yeah. Anything else? Yep.
So I found that a problem for me, I'll be sitting in a lecture, and a lot of the time, like, maybe I'm just trying to get down the PowerPoints or whatever, which is already given to us on Sunlearn and such, but I find that we move so quickly in the lectures that obviously can't really write out or type out fast enough.
Yeah.
And I'm left with like these huge gaps in my study. But now I'm with like, do I try and take down as much as possible, or do I just sit and try to absorb what's being given to me? Like, how do I find balance there?
That's a really great question. So generally, I felt myself falling into the same kind of issue of trying to take down all the stuff that's on the slides, but look, the slides are available, right? So what I normally do is that if there's a ton of information on a slide, I don't need to take that information down. I'll just make a note, that slide with this heading, has this information. Or sometimes I'll actually just put in a question that slide answers and just be like, answer on slide. Right? And then when you go to that question, it'll ask the question, and then you'll very easily be able to kind of find it in the slide. Are you also handwriting your notes?
Yeah.
So I'd also recommend typing, because you can get stuff down faster. Not in math subjects, by the way. So in math subjects, you can't type out numbers very quickly. So, but yeah, is that?
You do suggest trying to take down as much as possible?
No. It's such a fine balance. It's so difficult to figure out at the given time what that balance is, because you don't want to take down too little that you're missing important secondary kind of points, but you don't want to take down verbatim what the lecturer is saying. So that's why I will kind of, sometimes I'll accidentally start taking notes without using bullet points, and then I'll start making it almost like paragraphs. But you don't really want to take your notes down in paragraphs. Bullet point, I'll start and put it into the kind of bullet point format, and then it kind of automatically makes me just like line, next line, bullet point, right? And it just almost starts, you almost start automatically turning these into like the little points. And I'll do that indent thing where you have like little sub points so you can kind of, keep it in context of all the other things. I'm sorry about. All right. Are there any other kind of questions that you guys might have? And also, it doesn't have to be about things here. It can also just be your own kind of questions about studying. Yeah. Hi.
For example, like I have a test next week.
Okay.
And I'm basically doing everything that she said was wrong, but is proven to be wrong.
Yeah.
So now the fear is like, now that I know that what I'm doing is wrong, and now that I know what to do, like, my fear is that I can't immediately change to these new learning stuff because obviously I still have to adapt and learn to master it. So what do I do now when I'm like busy practicing everything that's basically not beneficial to me, but I need to like test it now?
What year are you in? Second year. Okay. Oh, I mean that's hard. When you're at a kind of crunch point, suddenly switching to a whole different method, it can take time to really get that thing, dialed down, and so you're not wasting time. So, at this kind of very close stage to your tests, I don't know if I can like recommend making a drastic switch with what you're doing right now. But for the future, maybe after these kind of tests are done, start trying to integrate some of these things. And some of these things that I've kind of said aren't the best. Look, some of you guys might have been. Some of you guys don't want to part with it, maybe. Right? And I get that, but this is what I'd really like is that if you saw something here that you're like that kind of gelled with you, try that thing and see if you notice a change. And if you do, then think about adding on some of these extra things. Because that's what happened to me. I started with doing some of these things. I saw that it actually worked. And then I was like, okay. And it became a process. It wasn't like, it wasn't a full drastic overhaul. It was a process of slowly learning, adding things. I remember when I started having to read papers. I was so confused about how I should go about reading and learning these scientific papers. But because I'd already figured out that people had studied how to learn things, I knew that somebody's probably studied how to best learn papers, and what universities are looking for you to learn from papers, and they have. So everybody, please scan the QR code, because this will it's basically just a little cheat sheet, right? It'll be like headings, exams, how to prepare for an exam, writing a paper, or doing a writing assignment, how to do that, time management. Okay, so and then at the bottom of that, I've got like a bunch of links to videos, studies that look at different kind of study methods, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Just to add on to what Dominic said, in your specific case, my dear, in that regard, rather take away the concepts of active recall and the learning time difference, mainly because, as he said, it's too soon. Literally, it's almost too late for you to start shifting a complete study method in 2 weeks from now. That is asking for trouble. So rather my challenge to you is this: go home, actually understand or try and figure out what did you learn from that, and then improve upon it. Remember, each do their own and each is unique in their own study styles, but this is general towards everyone. So yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. How effective is it to print the PowerPoints and download the PowerPoints and make notes on the PowerPoints? Because half of the work is already typed out without you, but
that's fine as well. So printing out the PowerPoints and then kind of making additional notes on that. And also, if you have the PowerPoints right there, you probably also have the time to kind of put in the questions right there and then in the lecture. So it's not a bad idea to use that method too. It's about being able to take down everything, and not miss out on stuff. Like that's really the goal. So if you have a way that you can get down all the information quickly, then that's great.
Hi. Do you have any advice on prioritizing your due dates? Because I feel like sometimes you feel something that's due later is more difficult to do, or it has more workload.
Yeah, so what I do is when I have an assignment, when I have multiple assignments, one, I will look at the marks, right? How much do they actually count? And then I will make sure that the one that counts for more is the one that I will, that's when I'm kind of setting up my times to do stuff. I'll make that the first thing that I start with because I know that's when I'm most fresh. Secondly, whenever I put down into my diary an assignment, I also put an estimation of how many hours it's going to take me to do it. Right, so I'll be like, okay, and you get better at it because you'll be like, okay, a sort of genetics tutorial will take me 3 hours, and so I'll write that down. Genetics tutorial, 3 hours in my diary on the due date. When I write it in the diary, I then go back over the days leading up to it. I see what else I have on those days, and then when I've got some gaps, I'll put in 1 hour genetics tutorial. Next day, 1 hour genetics tutorial. If I've got more time, I'll put 2 hours genetics tutorial. And so it's you kind of put in. That really helped me. Is that I'll put in estimations of how long things will take, and then I will put that through on my calendar so that then you don't really have to worry about that. Yeah. Cool.
Can I just have a shot?
Yeah, go ahead.
Again, hi guys. So my name is Tariq, and just to elaborate on what Annabelle said earlier about our new elections coming up, what an important limitation to that is, unfortunately, to be part of the executive of the PsychSUSS Society, you actually have to have psychology as a module. Bear in mind, our entire ethos as a society is to offer interventions or academic tips in terms of psychology, etc., etc. So that is a requirement, unfortunately. However, if you wish to be a general member, that you could do literally just emailing any one of the psychology representatives and fall within whichever portfolio you wish. Great.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking your time out to do this. I really hope it was helpful.